What's up, my friends? Welcome back to the Success Money Mindset Podcast. Today's guest, we have Mark Willis, who is the owner and founder of Lake Growth Financial Services. He's a CFP. He's in his 13th year running his practice, and he is a freaking badass. And I brought him onto the show to really understand more about how he grew and scaled his business, right? So, what were the early days of his career like? How does he think about mentoring some of the more junior advisors on his team? Why did he get into the business? How is he different from robo advisors? How he thinks about financial planning? Like, how did financial planning grow and transform his life personally? And why did he become an advisor in the first place? So we dig into all of that and so much more during the podcast episode today. So some of the questions I asked him were, do you feel imposter syndrome? Like, is that something you feel? If you do feel that, then how do you work through it? Some things we talked about is how do you get more people to say yes? Like, how do you get more people to say yes to you? How do you ultimately get more prospects? What's your prospecting strategy? So I talk about all of these things. We dug deep into the episode. I asked him all these questions to really understand how he grew and scaled his business and how he's achieved success. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. I had so much fun doing the episode with Mark, and we're going to dig in right now. And I'd love to hear what you think at the end of it. So let me know. All right, Mark, welcome to the Scotty Taylor Jr. Success Money Mindset Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. So first and foremost,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you, Scotty. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation today. I know we were just chit-chatting a little bit about all the amazing things we're going to talk about. What I'd love to start with is just really high-level background of who you are and why you're here. And then we're going to dig in. So I have a whole bunch of hard-hitting questions to throw at you.
Sure, man. Yeah, the short answer for sake of a longer one is just that I was in big trouble financially myself and had some strategies presented to me that changed my life. It changed not just my life, it changed my entire family tree. And it's unbelievable the impact that a financial plan made for me and my wife, like literally life or death, marriage or no marriage.
Wow.
These sorts of things where it was an unbelievable transformation for us. And so I wanted, like a blind beggar who found some bread, I wanted to get the word out to other people that this thing exists, that you can actually have security and peace of mind and so forth. And that's what brought me to doing what I do today. And I have the great privilege of getting to see transformation in the lives of our clients in all 50 states.
I love it. So, more detail for the folks that know that you're an advisor, but can you share a little bit more detail around like RIA? Are you at a broker
Yeah.
dealer? How does your business run?
So I personally am a certified financial planner and I run the business at Lake Growth Financial Services. We have several other advisors that are associates of mine that I've coached and trained, seven others that are out of house. And we work with them all across the country. We train them and teach them. They don't have to wear my banner, my Lake Growth Financial Services banner, but they certainly can. In fact, we're hiring in-house associates and we train and mentor and consult out of house associates all to build up their own business, their own practice in the way that has been successful for my business as we are now entering our 13th year. And at this point, we are, focused mostly as an insurance contracts based business. An IMO we're part of an IMO called Bank on Yourself, which, is a nationwide organization and mastermind that helps their clients, over 50,000 policyholders and account holders to reach their financial milestones and objectives without taking unnecessary risks and become their own source of financing,
Yeah.
which is a big deal for a lot of folks who are business owners and real estate investors. So we specialize in some of those tools to help them, become their own source of financing and think outside the bank.
Yeah. I love that. I think outside the bank. That's cool. So I have to ask, so you mentioned basically that there were some things that another advisor had shared with you that really transformed your life. What were some of the things that you had talked about or discovered? Was it tactical? Was it like intangible of like, oh my gosh, I'm actually finally looking at this? Was it like mindset? Like what were the things that you learned from that advisor that inspired you so much to actually become an advisor
Yeah.
yourself?
Well, in this case, it was not an advisor per se, a financial advisor. It was a college professor of mine
Oh,
who had no business in the financial world at all.
okay.
He had found this strategy so helpful to him that he passed it on to my wife and I. And you asked, what was it, mindset or tactics? It was kind of all three. And I call it three things: mindset, skill set, and strategy. So you got to go up and down the ladder in your business. I think you got to train and teach your prospects and clients all three. I think honestly, that's the mode of loyalty in our post-truth world, I think, is learning the aha moments and giving and training and giving those aha moments to your prospects is
Mhm.
what binds them to you. And it's what gives them the loyalty to stick with you for years to come. So to answer your question,
Yeah.
my wife and I were in student loan debt up to our neck. We had 2008 hanging over us, the worldwide global financial crisis, and we had no plan to pay off all the debts. We just didn't really pay attention to our money, and mostly it was my fault. I had so much student loan debt that it was 120 grand or so when we left college, and again, no jobs, and it was a worldwide recession, and there was no deferral of student loans really much back then. So we had to figure some way to pay this thing off. So we got all the side jobs we could get. And, I'm, scooping snow in the wintertime in Chicago and, digging underneath properties that are just decrepit old property management businesses, doing drywall, whatever I can do to make some money, working at restaurants at night. And so we're doing all that. And then my college professor comes and visits me. By the way, talk about an ego buster, right? To go from getting a master's degree and feeling like you're the smartest creme de la creme to to the bottom of the barrel, the plebeians that are cleaning out the bottoms of underneath elevators and
Oh, gee.
things that really bust your ego.
Yeah.
So anyway, my professor came and visited us, and he mentioned, "Hey, Mark, is it possible that Dave Ramsey could be wrong about something?" And that just sort of hung in the air around our conversation because at that point we had only heard like Dave Ramsey was the gospel of finance and
Right.
whatever. So we stumbled across this strategy called Bank on Yourself, which allowed me to pour money into a life insurance cash value product and then borrow against it.
Yeah.
And when you borrow against certain kinds of life insurance, you're probably familiar with this, Scotty, but
Hmm.
when you borrow against certain kinds, not all, but certain kinds of life insurance cash value, it will continue to grow and pay the full dividend as if you had never touched the money. So to me, this was not only a way to pay off my student loan debt in a better way than paying cash for it, but it also was a great way for me to start my business, buy cars, invest in real estate, and do so much more. So that's the short and sweet of my story.
Yeah, wow. I love it. I'm really curious to understand the early stages of your business, some of the skill sets you developed, how you kind of got your start. So I have an interesting question on the start of your business. How did you learn sales? I guess like what was your path to getting good at sales, right? Because this
Yeah.
is a business of sales and marketing, right? Like we talk about that a lot. I mentioned that
Are
a
there any
lot.
businesses that are not? I'm
Yeah.
just
That's
they
a good
all it's all
question.
sales. I mean, heck, my 9-year-old sells to me all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
true.
but you're exactly right. And I'll just say one more quick thing. The mindset piece was the biggest wake up for me. We talked about a strategy using life insurance to pay off my debt, but it really was the new frame of the new approach I had to money was I'm not somebody else's punching bag. I'm not somebody else's profit center. I'm not somebody's tennis ball floating down their gutter.
Mm,
I can actually go upstream financially. I can think critically. I can give agency to my own financial future, something I'd never really considered before, but it was very empowering. And I wanted to take that feeling of empowerment then to anybody else that we spoke to. And as far as like a start of sales, start of business, how did I learn sales? It's funny. I was just helping my daughter. I told you she's into sales. I meant that like in sort of a funny way, but it's like hey Dad, I really want this doll for Christmas. But actually, she's a pretty good. She's got a little cookie business and she's doing pretty good. I'm like,
that's
man,
great.
I
Yeah.
might go quit and work for her.
Yeah.
Um, but um, she, but anyway, the thing I would just say is my first had a lot in just business, but the first kind of plug it away kind of sales job I worked for a CPA firm and she had me collecting tax forms and reaching out. So somebody would say, "Hey, I'm in tax trouble. I need a CPA." And so it was my job to call that person after they filled out their online form
Mhm.
and just, hey, qualify them basically. hey, can I get your paperwork? Can I confirm that you really do need tax help? And so they gave me a phone dialer, and it was like 200 dials a day. And that will get you over your call reluctance, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And, I was basically on the phone all day long talking to people.
And how old were you at this time? I'm guessing.
I was in my mid 20s at the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I was probably in greater debt than most of the people there at that time
Yeah.
because I had so much student loan debt. But there's nothing like IRS debt, man. I mean, that's a whole nother level of trouble when you owe the people who can lock the door and make you never leave, meaning you can't get a passport. That's when you know you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was calling these folks and I was getting plenty of rejection, plenty of stall tactics, helping them overcome objections was a big part of that, and their own limiting beliefs. And I don't believe that today I'm more and more feeling less like sales is the primary definition, but definitely everyone is there to influence whether you're selling a widget or a glass of lemonade or my daughter's cookies. I think what we're selling, if we're selling anything, is the certainty that can come from meeting your goals without taking unnecessary risk.
Hmm.
I believe in risk as an entrepreneur, but I don't think I'm not 18 years old anymore, so I don't need unnecessary risk in my life, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I feel like is happening now is in terms of sales, marketing, and what we're offering, you might say.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So basically, you started at this CPA company, and this person was like, "Hey, we get forms that people fill out. Like, go call these people." So you're basically like, I would say like maybe a lukewarm calling. So they don't know you, they don't know anything about you. So you're calling them, and you're convincing them to what? To like have another conversation, to buy from you right then and there, to like admit that they have a problem. What are you convincing them of? Or I guess what are
Yeah,
you?
at that point, I'm going back 15, 17 years, so it could be, a little fuzzy, but if I
Yeah.
remember right, my job was to qualify them. They had filled out a form saying they wanted to talk to a CPA. They needed some tax relief and someone to negotiate for the IRS on their behalf. My CPA, I believe, was charging some sort of a fee that I would have to collect. And then I would also have to collect what are the tax forms, 8879 and some other ones that would kind of give us a sense of how much do they owe and these other things. So I would help them with that debt consolidation and negotiation practice. And sometimes it got into credit card debt, but mostly it was tax debt. And that's what I would have to do. I'd have to, I guess, convince them that their payment to the CPA was worth the price of admission to get
Yeah.
them out of this mega tax debt so they could settle for, pennies on the dollar and that sort of thing.
Wow. I love that. So, okay, so now as a financial advisor, so one of the things I'm really keen on understanding when I interview folks is really like what are maybe your zones of genius? Like what are the things that you feel like you do really well? And I think it's great to talk about product, we can talk about process, we can talk about any number of things. My biggest area of interest for a lot of the people that I think are listening to this and myself, honestly, is how you grew your business, right? So, like, what was your pathway? So, I'd love if you would start by maybe framing your growth. So, like, were you the kind of person who had explosive growth right off the bat? Was it like really steady and then it had like a hockey stick, or like has it just been like, just a general upward trajectory? Have there been downturns? Like, what's been your growth like recently, or I guess for the course of your career? And then I'd love to
Hmm.
talk a little bit deeper about like what influenced those maybe increases, decreases, kind of how you navigated that.
I know you've got some specific skills to help people in prospecting, specifically on platforms like LinkedIn and
Yeah.
beyond. And I will leave that expertise to you, my friend. I think I have a lot to learn from you on that because that's a huge, huge mine, gold mine, you might say, of people. I was not given the Project 100 like you hear about from some of these major mutual companies, but something similar to that. The gentleman who was a financial planner who trained me said, Mark, no one's coming to rescue you here. No one cares what you know. You got to go out and show them that you care about them and that you care about the person more than any product. So the first year I was very much just peanut butter and jelly style, just barely making it and just finding all of the people in my life that I could talk to about this. And facing that same rejection, but it's a different kind whenever it's somebody you know and a family or
Sure.
friend.
Yeah, it's
And
worse, I
it,
think.
yeah, it's worse. Yeah. And still we had a lot of success that year too. And then each year it grew and exponentially for many years, and it continues to grow. We've never had a down year, thank God. But we continue to find growth and find new places to explore. I think you asked, was it steady? No, it was very much like jolting the first few years, kind of like a pogo stick trying to take off, and then an airplane that kind of finally lifted off of the launch pad or the runway, I should say.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I would say it came from learning to take one platform and jump to the next one. I always loved playing Mario and platform video games, and you kind of jump from one platform to the next. And
Yeah.
that really is kind of how business has worked for me anyway. It's been podcast guesting and workshops. Like the first ones I think I did were I needed some business help. So I went to SCORE, which SCORE is it's a nationwide branch of the SBA. And in some cities, not all, sometimes it's not very good, but in Chicago it was very developed and they had a major office right downtown, right at Ogilvy Transportation Center. And so on like the 30th floor of this major high rise, it was Score Chicago. It was right there. And so you could have workshops. And I went and attended a few workshops and I paid to go in. And there were all these retired executives that would give you free mentoring. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. I get to talk to like a 45-year-old senior financial advisor on how to start my business for free. So I just went there and took mentoring and learned what a profit and loss sheet was and what a revenue forecast was and all this stuff. The simple stuff that you don't learn unless maybe you got an MBA, I guess. And so then we went through that process, got hooked into their workshop chain, and I actually asked them, "Hey, could I just speak? Could I be one of your presenters?" So they said, "Yeah." I don't know why they said yes, but they did. And so now I've got people, and this is a key learning lesson for me ever since. But when you can get people paying to hear what you have to say and leaning on the trust of another person or institution that they already trust, then the conversion rates go way up.
Yeah.
And again, your work is a lot easier in that case. And I think in the financial world, we need a little more time to speak and explain some of our strategies or whatever our solutions, financial plans. So
Yeah.
having a bit more than a 30-second soundbite is oftentimes helpful. So what I continually did was I would go from platform to platform and speak, learn to communicate my ideas, build my voice, my bold opinions, my clear and compelling message on what I think needs to happen in the world for your financial life to make sense. And I would just go from first it was physical workshops, libraries, BNI groups, Chamber of Commerce, things like that. And then increasingly it was online workshops, podcast guesting, where I'm speaking to folks that own or host a show or specifically a paid for mastermind. And that has made all the difference in the world. When you have somebody who has a trusted following that have people paying to hear what you're going to say next, yeah, it's an easy thing to just jump right on in there and be as helpful and as strategic as you can to help the audience that is paying to hear you speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, fully agree. I mean, I do a lot of talks to offices, and I definitely can concur that the effectiveness of those leads, they do convert at a pretty high rate because they've seen you, and what they'll share is, oh, well, they brought you in for a reason. Like they'll tell me like obviously they brought you in, so you obviously know what you're doing. So like the trust is there. They're like, oh, okay, like this person obviously can achieve results. So then the other objections are a little bit different, like, oh, this is a price objection, or will this work for me objection. It's not the are you who you say you are objection. Like you don't get
Hmm.
you'll get other objections, of course. Like not everybody says yes to everything. So, okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, early on, basically first year, you were just kind of like scrapping it. You were just like, talk to anybody that I can. And then moving forward, you started doing some workshops in person, BNI groups, online workshops. So my curiosity is, how did you find those to be, what did you do to make those effective? Because I think it's possible for people to hear things like that and be like, ooh, I should do a workshop, or I should do, like, I should join a BNI group. But I talk to a lot of advisors who join networking groups and don't see any success, right? So and one of the
Mm,
things I'm really keen on sharing with folks is that there is no right or wrong way to get people on the calendar. There's
hmm.
no ultimately correct or incorrect way. There's just effective or less effective. Like, you could call
That's right.
people yellow pages. Do you want to do that? Is it effective? Like, maybe not, right? But it's
Hmm.
possible you
Yeah.
could. So what would you say were some of the tools or techniques or strategies that you use to make those workshops more effective and actually getting people to say yes to a meeting with you and then become a client?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you that there's ultimately no incorrect or correct way, just sharper or less sharp, effective, ineffective, and things go out of style and then come back into style again too. Like I really think in person might become more popular again, workshops that is. Like I stopped doing in-person workshops about 2 years before COVID because I was just sick and tired of schlepping through the snow in Chicago's winters.
Yeah.
And there's a whole story there, which I won't bore you with, but let's just say it involved ice scrapers and a library 2 hours away, and I'm never doing that again. So, with that out of the way, I think, yeah, you're right. Some of the tools, techniques, and strategies that made it more effective to get people to say yes with a meeting with me. Well, the first is the environment. Like I think really if you believe that you're in a professional space with a expert speaker who has something important to say, again, this is where I think paying some money to be in the room
Yeah.
and to first be introduced by someone who you trust. So like if I'm listening to Scotty, I want to be paying to hear him and other people speak, and I want to be like I want to be introduced to you through someone that I trust, that I've already built that trust.
Yeah.
So we call it audience jacking. We call it leveraging another host's audience. So the host did all the work to get the people there.
Yeah.
The host did all the work to build the trust in the relationship. I made my best efforts to be a good person in his living room or her living room.
Yeah.
Like I'm not kicking my feet up and, tracking mud through their house. And what do I mean? I mean I'm being polite to his audience or her audience. I'm deferring to the host as the expert in his or her area.
Yeah.
So like we've done a ton with real estate investor mastermind groups, and we'll just speak, very convincingly that we and truthfully that we are super impressed with the success of the mastermind leader and whatever she or he did to become successful. We work with a number of business owner mastermind groups and business investor mastermind groups. And once again, there's always a proven method or an approach that the mastermind leader has developed,
Yeah.
some sort of intellectual property. And really, my role is just to say, hey, this guy is legit. And thank you for letting me, this special part of your workshop or seminar. Like we would go and fly out to different live events that different masterminds would do, and we've done online webinars with masterminds. But the key is just the context. What do you expect when you're a participant in this mastermind? What are you expecting?
Mhm.
Do you expect a free workshop? That's why I don't want to do, I call them plate liquor seminars, where you pay for everyone's chicken.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I hope I never am forced to do that because what are we expecting? We're expecting a free meal and then get out of there as fast as you can without scheduling an appointment. That's what I see as like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a lot of networking groups. I agree. I've been a part of a few that don't really produce. And I'll go back to platform jumping. When you realize that you're really not making a difference here or that they don't see you in the proper context as an expert, it's
Mhm.
time to jump. And it's okay to jump and give yourself 90 days and then reevaluate
Yeah.
and keep moving. And so that's what I'd say to that. And anything you'd add to that?
Uh, that's super helpful. So basically, it's kind of what I think. So I use this metaphor with some of my clients and my students that sometimes they'll come to me and they'll metaphorically jump out of an airplane and without a parachute, and they're like, "What do I do? What do I do?" And I'm like, "Nothing. It'll be over soon. Like it's
Yeah,
too late." And so I guess what I'm taking away from what you shared was if you just show up at a talk and you just like do the talk and you're like, well, I didn't get people the book. It's like it was too late. Like it's not the talk
right.
itself. It's actually everything before that. So are you
Yeah,
talking to people who are interested in what you have to share? Why are they there? Are they there because they're
mhm,
mandated to be there? Are they there because they want something for free? Or are they there
right.
because they genuinely want to learn and they want to actually explore, right? Because it could be the same person, but in two different environments, it could be very different. So I was in
That's
a
right.
mastermind. So I have a coach that I've paid $50,000 to work with, which is not an insignificant amount of money, but he's helped me
Mhm.
tremendously. I've tripled my revenue in like 4 or 5 months. So worth it to me.
Awesome.
And he just did a retreat, a 3 day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday retreat, the last 3 days. And it was in person here in Miami. So it's really nice. I didn't have to fly, which was like really nice. But it's
Hmm.
interesting because people came to speak. There were some speakers there, and I paid to be in that room. Like it is a high ticket place
Yeah,
to be. And some of the
yeah,
people that came, they did their events and they did their speaking. And I'm much more open and receptive to hearing what they have to say and potentially even investing with them because I'm already there out of my own volition. Like I want to be there and I want to actually
right.
get what it is that they're sharing. So I guess that's really my biggest takeaway from what you had
Precisely.
shared is, yeah, like make sure you're talking to the right people, which is like
Yes.
maybe a no-brainer, but like I think it's important to call out.
Right. Well, pay attention to what the incentives are. And as you said so well, I mean, you paid to be in that room.
Yeah,
And so if you're already someone who pays, you're going to be paying attention. That's another form of currency.
yeah.
And if you bought once, you'll probably buy again in that same room. So those are just key takeaways. But then as far as like tactically, yeah, as far as like the call to action, I would suggest your listeners spend about at least half your preparation time practicing that call to action.
Yeah.
And there's a whole like framework around that I teach my students, around how to do calls to action, which we don't have time, I'm sure, to get into right now. But,
Yeah.
just being and ready, able to help give people a visual on exactly what they'll be experiencing
Hmm.
and how it'll make them feel to become your client. So you want
Yeah.
visualization, logic, get that practical person. Here's where you park your car. Here's where you come up to my office. Here's what we're going to do when we sit down and meet together. And then also, here's what it'll help you accomplish. Here's how it'll make you feel. Imagine what it would look like to have your kids' college paid for,
Yeah.
or have your student loans paid off without going broke in the process. Just giving them that specific call to action in a way that encourages people that they'd be crazy not to work with you, that they have to work with you if they're rational people.
That's great. I love that. What you're sharing, like the preparation for the call to action, is something that I think that everybody, myself included, can get better at, not just with call to actions, but with spending more time. It's like the metaphor of we're stepping over $100 bills to pick up pennies. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, I booked the talk. I'm just gonna go and wing it. And then you don't like
Yeah.
prepare the presentation, you don't prepare the call to action, or you spend so much time on the slides that you don't prepare
Yeah.
any call to action, and then
Well,
you
Scotty, and I'll just underline what you're saying there, and I don't mean to interrupt, but think about it this way. If you're putting so much effort into showing off how fancy your trinkets are, you're going to show them how much you love your trinkets, and you're also going to tell them how little you care about the clients.
yeah,
So if you can spend more time showing them how much you love your clients and how much you care about them and the
yeah,
prospects that possibly are in the room, yeah, sure, you've probably got some cool investment strategies or some cool insurance policies or whatever, but you should love the people in that room and your clients as a extension of them more than anything you could ever show them.
yeah,
No one cares how smart we are, you
yeah.
know? Um, no one. And you don't get paid to show off your smartness. You get paid to come alongside people and help them say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like probably one of the most ego deflating things you can do. Is get like really,
Yeah.
really the better you get, the more you have to put your ego off to the side. Because I'll talk to folks, right? I'll talk to clients and they'll be like, oh, the person didn't move forward to the next conversation after the initial call. They didn't say yes, they didn't give me referrals. And I'm like, yeah, share with me like what your process looks like or what your language is. And they're like, well, I do this and I do that. And I'm like, nobody fucking cares about you. Like, and I say that
Hmm.
with so much love. That's the reality of it. They don't care about you. And I think that as you get more experience and then you get more confidence in these roles, you start to recognize more and more that you're less relevant. It's ultimately how
Hmm.
you make people feel.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the things that I think I've learned is that like you got to take that ego and put it off to the side. Even though it feels good to talk about yourself and all the cool things that you can do, it doesn't actually help get people to action, and then therefore you're not helping them. So kind of like what's the
Hmm.
point? I have an interesting side question. So, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? So, knowing that you've been doing this for a while now, I'm curious if you feel imposter syndrome in any area of your business or in any area of life, if you feel like kind of like a fraud sometimes, and if you do, or maybe if you have in the past, how did you address it? Like, what did you do?
I don't know if I've ever felt like a fraud at all. I certainly felt in over my head or somewhat overwhelmed. Sure, absolutely. Who wouldn't? Imposter syndrome per se, I don't think I've got that. I'd say a few things that early on, someone told me that, Mark, the more you live outside of your comfort zone, the bigger that comfort zone becomes.
Yeah.
And those that live in their comfort zone are going to stay small. They're going to have a small game. They're going to be selling the smallest little life insurance policies or taking the smallest IRA rollovers or whatever. But learn to try something new, like work on some unique, nuanced business owner solutions. Like we're working on a 412(v)(3 plan right now. And I love getting to try new things that I don't often get to play in. What is a 412(v)(3? I couldn't have answered that 7 years ago or 6 years ago. And I've learned about it since then and have been trying it since then. Now we're getting into it now with some big business owners. But have yourself just regularly uncomfortable. There's the governor in your life and the little bitch in your life. And you need your governor to tell the other one to knock it off and to live outside that comfort zone. And you'll find that you can go some places you never thought possible.
So that's maybe a good example with this 412E. So the first time you did it, I'm guessing you didn't have a lot of knowledge, you didn't have a lot of experience, and you sound like somebody, if I'm kind of maybe reading between the lines, you're like a pretty logical person. You're like, well, I don't know it, but I'm gonna like do the research to figure it out. So like maybe like it's kind of silly to have to feel like an imposter because you're like, of course I don't know. Like it's brand
Yeah,
new for
yeah.
me. But what would be some of the steps that you would take, or maybe if some of the mentees that you work with, if they maybe
Hmm.
feel like they came over from teaching or they came over from
Yeah.
like being a server and they're like, listen, Mark, I don't have any knowledge of financial planning. Like I'm just still newer. I don't feel
Hmm.
really compelled to go up to a 45-year-old and be like, hey, I can help you with your planning. I'm 25. So I'm just
Hmm.
what advice you would give or how you would coach somebody like that in how to become more confident or exhibit the tendencies of somebody who is more confident.
Man, there's so much good content out there, and it's such a great question. So, the first thing is really make sure that you feel totally comfortable using the phrase, let me get back to you on that.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me get back to you on that. There's no risk and no problem when someone says they have a question about such and such. Just take notes like crazy and get back to them on that. There's nothing wrong with that. Next, work hard. This will not happen automatically. So you might have a fear of being found out, like, oh, he's not actually or she's not actually competent. Well, what did we just learn? We learned that it doesn't matter per se how smart you are. What matters is how much do you love and care for the people you've been entrusted with as your clients and prospects. Um, so there's also true frauds, and then just people who are on the upward swing. Okay,
Yeah.
so just be aware that you're just on the upward swing, and hopefully the people who are true frauds will get out of the business and or be forced out. And then I would, just be curious. Oh, hey, again, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Let me find out for you and tell me more about that. We'll solve 90% of this, and it'll help you explore and expand that comfort zone. If
Mhm.
you've never talked to a real estate investor, let them tell you more about that. Oh, what's that like? Tell me what that was like when you fix and flip your properties 17 times in a year or whatever. Or what's it like to be a syndication manager or whatever. These things, these conversations, people love to share their story.
Yeah.
And so give them that chance to do so and learn and take notes along the way and expand that comfort zone.
Yeah, people love to talk about themselves. That is very true. So if you're not entirely sure, you can just ask questions. It's interesting because I feel like I'm like thinking about maybe the early stages of my career coming in, no sales experience, no clue how to ask for a referral. Like that is not something
Yep.
that you are taught. And of course, like some of the initial conversations I had with my friends, family members, I would work with a joint work partner. So it wasn't like just me. So like I did
Yep.
that for probably like 6 months. I do think that at times advisors too quickly want to jump out and try to do everything on their own. And I'm like, totally, I get that desire because you want, like, that's
Yep.
definitely an ego desire for the record, but I understand it. But more often than not, it's really just it's a detriment because um what you'll learn with a joint work partner there will be expedited versus if you did it on your own and had to go back and ask questions. But I think I'm just kind of reflecting on it. I'm curious if this is ever how you felt with imposter syndrome, right? Like kind of going into conversations, or I never felt like a fraud in meetings. I was never like sitting there being like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Because similar to you, I was like, I'll figure it out. Like I
Hmm.
will figure it out. But there have definitely been times when I've hit certain numbers. And, I walked the stage at my company, and like I was number two in the Western region. And afterward, I was like, I did all of that, but like the external success doesn't feel like the internal version of me.
Hmm.
So there was
Hmm.
like a disconnect there. But I think that this is kind of like a long-winded way of kind of sharing at least my thoughts on it. I was always in so much pain about staying mediocre or about not achieving my goals that the pain of that was so much stronger than the pain of not knowing what I'm talking about, or somebody
Yeah.
being like, you're an idiot, or I fucked something
Yes.
up with an investment and I'm like, oh shoot, like I need to figure it out. So like that was painful, obviously. Like I remember that I did a 401k rollover, and the guy got his check. It was 600,000, and it sat in cash for weeks because I didn't know how to open up an investment account.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
couldn't, and I just,
Hmm.
and eventually he was like, I'm not working with you anymore. He canceled everything that he was working on. And he was one of my biggest clients that I've ever
Yeah.
had. And like, he just canceled everything. And I was like, well, that sucks. But I mean,
Yeah.
the pain of staying where I was still greater. So I'm just curious if you've ever felt that way or maybe something similar to that.
Oh, that's a really thoughtful question. I think and first of all, I think everyone's been there where they messed up some client because of some small thing, and you learn that lesson. I bet you know exactly how
Yes.
to do, open up the investment accounts and
Seared
everything.
into my
So,
memory. Yeah.
yeah, I would only just add to what you've said that, I think the problem I see, and this happens with prospects and clients too, we fear making another money mistake.
Mm,
We fear, so folks won't open that IRA with you or open up that life insurance policy with you because they remember how it feels to make other mistakes and they don't want to do it again. There's also the fear of being imperfect. Especially the perfectionists out there. I'm talking about prospects and clients, but also advisors here. They'll sit on their hands and have this ambiguous, like, oh, I don't know, I'm still thinking about it, because they fear the imperfect. They fear they in fear of being imperfect, they don't move forward with the okay and good. So be okay with that. And I think there's some deep stuff there, and we probably could put on our therapy hats here, but um, you internalized your personal success rather than waiting for someone else to validate externally your success through rewards and trophies and whatever else you might get, compensation.
yeah.
That to me, I think is a key one right there. If you can let the internal definition of who you are change your outcomes, I think that's the biggest part. I've always said my biggest fear is also my greatest ambition, which is the word potential.
Yeah.
So potential. Have I met my potential today? Is a very exciting question. And the word potential is great when you're a kid and when you're just starting out. Wow, he's got such potential.
Yeah.
Number two in the Western region or whatever. That's what potential. And then how scary it would be to not activate that potential,
Yeah.
to go to your grave and never know how far you could have gone. Ooh, man, that gives me goosebumps. So
Yeah.
it's that internal motivation, in my opinion, that really charges you out of your comfort zone and into something bigger and greater
Yeah.
and helps you activate that potential. I think activated potential is really it's the fuel that pushes you into the uncomfortable zone, which is where growth happens.
Yeah. That's really great. If I could like impart any like blessing on anybody, it would be to come to any of these types of realizations as early on in life as possible. And sometimes it happens when you're 30, 40, 50. Sometimes it happens when you're 60 or 70. But hopefully it happens to you like when you're in the earlier stages of basically the fear of failure, the fear of not being perfect becomes smaller than the fear of you're wasting your potential.
Yeah,
And it's actually interesting what you had shared. I never really thought about that, but I did look to external sources for validation early on in my career, which I think is why I felt so funky because I was looking for the ribbons. I was looking for my name on the plaques. I was looking to be acknowledged. And I was like, oh, I got that, therefore I am good enough. That's not a
right.
conscious thought. It
Hmm.
was very unconscious at the time. But now
Totally.
I'm driven by I'm driven by numbers that have no bearing. Like I want to hit $120,000 months. That's my goal right
Hmm.
now. I'm at
Hmm.
like 75, so like I have a little bit of room to grow there. And
Hmm.
I make enough money. I don't need quote unquote need. Of course, I would love like, a beach house that's like a couple $1 million and
Yeah,
whatnot. But like the difference between those two numbers is not a sizable change in my personal life. Like I'm not flying on private jets. I don't really care. But the internal drive to get there is internal. And I think that
sure.
that was a really insightful thing that you shared that hopefully people picked up on that let the internal definition of who you are change your outcomes instead of the other way around.
Well, I would say there's a balance because, our locus of evaluation, I'm going to use that phrase, locus of evaluation should fall somewhere between the two. One that sort of incorporates the expectations of others. I'll never be a ballerina. Okay. I would be an imposter if I tried to be.
Yeah,
And
that's
also,
true.
it should be firmly anchored in our own personal perspective of ourselves. In fact, I've been thinking lately about how interpretation is actually one of our greatest assets. How do we interpret the things that we've paid attention to about ourselves?
Hmm.
So this got a little deeper than I expected we'd go today, Scotty, but this is kind of where I've been just mulling around in my own mind. How
Yeah.
do you understand your month last month when you got 75 instead of 120? What was your perception of yourself?
Hmm.
Because you're right, it doesn't matter what we have on our bank balance per se. I realize it's easy for you and me to say that when we're not making, when we have one client in our pipeline,
Yeah.
when we've had a little few years of success, it's easy for folks who've been successful to say stuff like this, like we're talking about today. But I would just say this: when you've got a a goal in mind, 120 a month versus 75 a month, for example, um, what's that? Uh, what's that quote? He says, and I'm going to forget who Jim Rohn says, don't do it for what you can get from it. Don't make $1 million for what it will buy you. Get $1 million for what you will have to become in order to achieve it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. I want to leave it at that. I don't even want to like, I don't want to, I have so many thoughts on it, but I guess I have one more question for you. Because I feel like we could keep talking. We could even do a part two. Like this, we're definitely, I think, hitting on some really great stuff here. How do you think about work-life balance? Or how do you think about life? I don't mean like work-life balance as in like 9 to 5. I just mean like as the most general concept of it,
Mhm.
balancing work and life.
Well, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. When I think about it, it's actually one of our goals is a balance in all, like one of the key values in my practice is to have like I have a balance in all areas of life, business,
Yeah.
social, spiritual. But actually, balance is just the means to the end, in my opinion. If you think about it, every time you take a step, you're balancing. And every time you take a step, you're actually overcorrecting an imbalance. You lean a little more to the left, you lean a little more to the right. That's walking. And actually, no, that's just waddling back and forth. To really walk, you have to also push forward into something new. And so actually, I would say the goal of balance is not balance. The goal of balance is abundance.
Mm,
It's thriving. So balance is just what gets you to abundance. I don't just want to balance. And in fact, true equilibrium, Scotty, from like a biological perspective, is death. Like
yeah,
if your body is fully equalized with the environment around you, if you don't have a higher temperature than the ground,
yeah,
that's called dead. All right. So
yeah.
I
That's
don't
a
just
good
want
point.
balance. I want to move toward my potential,
Yeah,
activating my potential with every step I take. But I got to do it through balance. I can't just be working 90 hours a week at the office.
right.
I need time in spiritual reflection and meditation. I need family time. I need relaxation time. And I need to be able to rejuvenate myself. That's how you activate your potential is through, back and forth, overcorrecting the last mistake. I'll always be doing too much of this or that,
Yeah.
uh, dialing back my sweets or whatever, and working on my, BMI, whatever it is. But that's balance to me. What would you add to that?
That's great. I've never heard it described like that, but I really like that perspective. I think of balance very differently than I think most people like describe balance of like a work-life balance. Like I work and then I have like time to rest and recharge. So the way I think about it is in a couple facets. So one is your energy. I think that us humans have different varying degrees of energy, introverted, extroverted, and I think that balance is about maintaining high levels of energy so that you can continue to perform and produce. And when I say perform and produce, I don't just mean like financially, I mean like in your relationships and with your dog and your kids and like friendships and like in your community. And so if you're overcorrected in one area, like you're working so much that your sleep is being impacted, then you won't have the ability to give the next day in whatever other
Mhm.
area. So I think part of it is energy, like how you feel. I'm actually quite introverted. And so I had these 3 days of this retreat. Yesterday, Sunday, I it ended at 2:30. I went home and I was like, fuck, I'm done talking to people for the next like 6 hours. And I just worked on my computer. Like I just did work for hours
Mhm.
and I got myself lunch and I took a drive to the beach and I hung out with my dog and like I just enjoyed myself so I could wake up today and have the ability to be on all day today. But I think that balance, it's interesting. I think that balance it comes in seasons. So I think there's seasons of working harder or working less hard. Like I think there's ebbs and flows to it. I just like that's just the way that I like to think about it. I don't think it's right or wrong, but I just like the idea of working for like a month straight and just like really work, like taking a couple days off here and there, but just working a lot. And then having a period of time. I'm going to Europe this summer for a month, month and a half. I will not work Mondays and Fridays while I'm in Europe. And I'm just going to have that be more of a maintenance period. But I just think that what I've observed, this is like a whole tangent now that I'm going on, but what I've observed with business owners and financial advisors in specific is that they think that money, when they make more money or when they work harder, that it will create balance for them in their lives. And that's not what I've observed. Systems and processes and staff create freedom and can create
Mhm.
balance.
Yeah.
So you can make more money, you can hit like 200, 300,000. If you do it entirely on your own and you take a couple weeks off, your revenue is going to drop. It's going to go back down to basically zero if you're the only driver of revenue in your business. So balance in the traditional sense, I don't believe like working 12 hours a day until Friday and then drinking yourself into a stupor on the weekend and then going to work on Monday. Like
Mhm.
I've done that. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily at that stage of life anymore. But my balance, like macro is seasons of life. Like I'll work harder or less hard at different seasons. I'll be dating more, dating less in this season. I'll be hanging out with my friends more or less in this season. And then with the energy perspective as well, of like making sure that my energy is I'm not going down to zero. I'm keeping it at like
Great.
25%. So I'm not depleted at the end of the day.
Love that. Yeah. That's really wise. Yeah, we've got to continually find ways to just maximize the couple of spins around the sun we have here. And I found that sounds like you found some really great strategies to help you in the overcorrecting of the last mistake and just continually moving the ball forward down the field, man. That's great stuff.
I appreciate that. I think also something that I talk about a lot is priorities and understanding what are your priorities. Honestly, one of my top priorities, if not my top priority, is work, is building my business and being the top coach consultant for financial advisors in the US. Therefore, other things are just not as high of a priority for me at certain times. Like hanging out with some friends, just not as much of a priority. And that might sound like kind of like sad, but I love my friends and I will hang out with them. But like my friends know I'm not calling you every night. Like that's just
You better
not
not be. Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have that capacity right now.
Well, listen, I think that's totally fair and fine. I think your friends know what your goals are,
Yeah.
and they're the crab bucket friends, and then they're the friends that are helping you climb out of that crab bucket.
Yeah.
So I hope that you'll find folks that are helping you move up to the next level.
I appreciate that. Mark, for all the advisors that are maybe interested in talking more with you, would you share a little bit more? I know we had talked a little bit that you do coaching, you do offer some mentorship. Can you share a little bit more about
Yeah.
that and let people know where to find you?
Sure. Well, just to be clear, you and I do very different work. I mean, I think folks should be working with you and tag teaming with the services and the coaching and consulting you offer. I would be more of a if you're let's say this, if you need a specific guardrail and even railway like specifically with financial tools, products, lead gen strategies, case design, how to do workshops and networking events that don't just lead to a dead end, but actually lead to 7 and 8 figure a year business. That's what I specialize in and would be honored to serve you. We work with advisors, soup to nuts. If you're just getting started in this practice, or if you're looking to take your business to the next level, imagine what it would feel like to wake up and have 6 figures of passive income rolling in every single month. That's what we help with. That's what I work on. And so we've helped other dozens of other advisors go through this same process, and I'd be honored to chat with you too. The best thing you can do is go to my website, which is kickstartwithmark.com, kickstartwithmark.com. That's Mark with a K. And just do a 15-minute phone meeting and just write in there, say something like advisor looking for help,
Yeah.
something like that, and I'll be happy to answer questions and discuss some options. So that's kickstartwithmark.com.
Got it. And we'll link that up in the show notes as well. Mark, thank you for your knowledge, for your insight. This got a lot deeper than I thought it was going
Yeah,
to.
me too. Yeah, we
So
grabbed the scuba gear, right?
yeah, I love it. It's great though. Well, this is amazing. I'm excited for everybody to hear this. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate your time, your energy, your wisdom. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, but thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.